Success rarely arrives the way the world imagines it. From the outside, victory looks sudden, clean, and effortless. But behind every empire stands a long corridor of silence, doubt, and humiliation. The world celebrates the final triumph, yet it rarely looks back at the painful years where defeat was the only companion walking beside the dream. Imagine standing in a crowded room full of hopeful applicants, waiting for the simplest opportunity just to earn a living. One by one, names are called, people are accepted, and relief fills the air. But when the final decision arrives, only one person is rejected, not because he tried less, but because the world simply decided he was not good enough. Years later, that same man would stand at the center of a digital empire worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Governments, investors, and global leaders would listen when he spoke. Yet the same society that once dismissed him as unemployable now praises him as a visionary. The contrast is almost impossible to believe. He started with nothing, no money, no influential family, no connections that could open doors behind closed offices. Even more unbelievable, he had no technical skills in the industry he would eventually dominate. Before success ever appeared, rejection became his daily reality. Job application after job application ended the same way: 30 attempts, 30 rejections. Each one quietly whispering the same brutal message that perhaps the world simply had no place for him. So the question becomes unavoidable. How does someone who is repeatedly rejected by universities, corporations, and society itself develop the strength to continue? How does a man labeled as a failure build the mental armor strong enough to reshape an entire global industry? The answer does not begin with wealth, technology, or influence. It begins with a stubborn belief that refuses to die, even when everything else collapses. And the man at the center of this unlikely story is Jack Ma. Hangzhou, China, in the 1960s, was a quiet city far removed from the centers of global opportunity. Resources were limited, information was restricted, and for most families, survival mattered more than ambition. Jack Ma was born into this modest environment, raised in a household that carried no wealth, no powerful connections, and no clear path toward success. Yet, even as a child, something about him was different. While many around him focused only on local realities, he became strangely fascinated with a language from the other side of the world. English represented more than words to him. It felt like a hidden door to a much larger universe waiting beyond China's borders. To open that door, he created a discipline few children would ever accept. Every morning before sunrise, he climbed onto his bicycle and rode for nearly 40 minutes across the quiet streets of Hangzhou. Rain or snow did not matter. For 9 years, this journey became part of his daily life. His destination was the Hangzhou Hotel, where foreign tourists occasionally stayed. Jack offered them free city tours, guiding strangers through streets he already knew by heart. In exchange, he asked for only one thing: conversation in English. One visitor eventually gave him a new nickname that would follow him forever: Jack. Despite this determination, school was never easy for him. Exams repeatedly exposed his academic struggles, especially in subjects that demanded strict logic and memorization. He failed his primary school tests more than once, proving he was far from the image of a gifted prodigy. The challenges only grew larger when he attempted the National College Entrance Exam, the Gaokao. His first attempt ended in embarrassment when he scored an astonishingly low 1 point in mathematics. Most students would have accepted defeat at that moment. Jack refused to do so. After several attempts and relentless persistence, he finally secured admission to a modest teacher's institute. He was not the smartest student in the room, nor the most promising on paper. But he carried something far more dangerous: a stubborn willingness to fail again and again without giving up. Adulthood did not open doors for him. It revealed just how tightly they were closed. The job market in his city was unforgiving, and every opportunity seemed guarded by expectations he did not meet. Enthusiasm alone was not enough. Again and again, his optimism collided with a wall of rejection that refused to move. He began applying everywhere he could think of: hotels, offices, service jobs, any position that promised stability. 30 different applications were sent out across the city. 30 answers returned, and every single one carried the same cold response: no. One moment would become legendary. When a new KFC restaurant opened in Hangzhou, 24 applicants showed up hoping for work. 23 people were accepted without hesitation. Only one person in the room was rejected. That person was Jack Ma. Still refusing to quit, he turned to other options. At one point, he applied to join the local police force, hoping discipline and service might offer a future. The recruiter scanned the small group of candidates, paused when he looked at Jack, and bluntly said, "You are no good." His ambition even reached beyond China. Jack applied to Harvard University, believing education abroad might change his destiny. 10 separate applications were sent over time. 10 separate rejections arrived in return, each one silently closing another imagined path. For most people, this level of denial would slowly destroy confidence. When rejection becomes a pattern, doubt begins to whisper dangerous questions. Maybe the world is right. Maybe the dream is unrealistic. Maybe you simply are not valuable enough. But something unusual began forming inside him during these years of humiliation. Instead of surrendering, the pressure hardened his mindset. By the time he reached his late 20s, Jack Ma had experienced so many defeats that fear itself started to lose its power. He had nothing left to lose. By his late 20s, the optimism that once carried him forward had grown quiet. The world had spoken clearly through rejection after rejection. With few options left, Jack accepted a modest position teaching English at a local institute, earning barely $12 a month. It was honest work, but it felt painfully small compared to the dreams he once imagined. Each day followed the same predictable rhythm: a classroom, a chalkboard, and students who saw him only as a teacher, not a dreamer. Meanwhile, many of his former classmates were beginning stable careers and building comfortable lives. Watching from the sidelines, Jack sometimes wondered if his ambitions had simply been illusions. Then in 1995, an unexpected opportunity appeared. Jack traveled to the United States as a translator, stepping into a world that felt dramatically different from the one he knew. For the first time, he encountered the rapidly growing digital revolution that was quietly reshaping the global economy. One moment would change everything. Sitting in front of a computer for the first time, he typed a simple word into the internet search bar: beer. The screen filled with information from countries across the world. But when he searched for anything related to China, there was nothing. The silence was shocking. In that instant, he saw something most people around him could not yet imagine. China was invisible on the internet, and that absence looked less like a problem and more like an opportunity. If his country was missing from this digital world, then someone would eventually build the bridge. Returning home, he launched his first internet venture called China Pages. The idea was simple but revolutionary for its time, helping Chinese businesses appear online. Yet investors were skeptical. Technology was limited, and many people openly mocked the concept. Eventually, powerful state-owned competitors forced him out of the very company he had created. Control slipped from his hands, and the dream collapsed once again. For a moment, he retreated to a government job in Beijing, sitting quietly with his team on a cold, snowy night, wondering if the vision they once believed in had died forever. In 1999, something inside Jack Ma finally changed. After years of waiting for approval from employers, investors, and institutions, he reached a quiet realization. Opportunity was never going to be handed to him by the world. If a door refused to open, he would have to build an entirely new entrance himself. So one evening in Hangzhou, He invited a small group of people to his apartment. It was not an office, not a conference hall, just a cramped living space with bare walls and simple furniture. 17 friends, former students, and loyal believers gathered inside, unsure of what exactly they were about to hear. For more than 2 hours, Jack spoke with relentless energy. He described a future where small businesses across China could sell their products to the entire world through the internet. From that tiny apartment, he proposed building a global marketplace powerful enough to compete with international giants. What changed that night was not only the business idea, it was Jack's mindset. He stopped asking powerful institutions for permission to succeed. Instead, he demanded belief, discipline, and courage from the small team sitting in that room. The decision they made required real sacrifice. Everyone present reached into their own savings, contributing whatever they could. When the counting finished, they had gathered $60,000. It was not much money, but it represented something far stronger: collective faith. Jack also carried an unusual advantage. His history of rejection had already tested him in ways business challenges never could. 30 job rejections had built emotional armor around him. If he could survive that humiliation, he believed this team could survive building a company from nothing. From that modest apartment, a new company was born. They called it Alibaba. At that moment, it was not a giant corporation, not even a stable startup. It was simply the determination of a group of ordinary people who refused to accept the limits the world had placed on them. The early days of Alibaba were far from glamorous. The team worked inside small rooms filled with borrowed computers and second-hand furniture. Many nights ended with people sleeping on the floor beside their desks, driven not by comfort but by belief. For 3 long years, the company earned almost no revenue at all. Money was always running out, and doubt often filled the silence between late-night discussions. Investors were cautious, the internet economy was still uncertain, and every decision carried risk. Yet Jack continued pushing his team forward, reminding them that building something meaningful always required patience far beyond ordinary expectations. Then, in 2001, the global .com crash struck like a storm. Internet companies around the world collapsed almost overnight as investors panicked and funding disappeared. Alibaba suddenly found itself standing in a dangerous place where survival itself became the daily mission. But the greatest challenge arrived when the American giant eBay entered the Chinese market. Backed by massive capital and global dominance, eBay looked unstoppable. For many observers, the battle seemed already decided before it even began. Jack responded with a bold strategy that surprised everyone. Instead of charging sellers, he launched Taobao and made the entire platform free. While competitors focused on profits, Alibaba focused on growth, slowly building loyalty among millions of small Chinese merchants. His leadership style during this time was unusual and deeply philosophical. Jack often told his employees that foreign competitors were powerful sharks in the ocean. But in China, he reminded them, Alibaba was the crocodile in the Yangtze River, and crocodiles always win in their own waters. Year by year, the strategy began to work. Trust in online trade grew with the creation of Alipay, allowing buyers and sellers to transact safely. Then in 2014, the world watched as Alibaba went public on the New York Stock Exchange, creating the largest IPO in history. The same man once rejected by KFC now rang the opening bell. The journey of Jack Ma reveals a powerful truth about failure. Rejection is rarely a final verdict on your potential. More often, it is a brutal filter designed to test how long your determination can survive when the world offers no encouragement at all. Looking back, those 30 job rejections appear less like obstacles and more like redirections. Each closed door quietly pushed him away from an ordinary life he might have accepted. Without those painful moments, the path toward building something extraordinary might never have appeared. His story also shows the unexpected power of learning. For Jack, studying English was never just about vocabulary or grammar. It expanded his worldview, connected him with ideas beyond his environment, and ultimately gave him the perspective that helped him see opportunities others could not. Now the story turns toward you. Think about the failures you have faced recently. The unanswered emails, the interviews that ended in silence, the plans that did not unfold the way you hoped. These moments often feel like proof that something is wrong with us. But what if those moments are not proof of limitation? What if they are preparation? The same way rejection shaped Jack Ma's resilience, your struggles may be quietly building the mindset required for a future you cannot yet see. So the real question becomes simple. Will you allow the word no to define the borders of your life, or will you use every rejection as another brick in the foundation of something greater? Sometimes the very thing that stops you today is preparing you for tomorrow. If this story shifted the way you see failure, subscribe to Success Stories. Keep building, protect your mindset, and remember, your greatest rejection might only be the opening chapter of your greatest victory. See you in the next story.